Chosen one, somebody just made a fatal miscalculation. Right now there is a public crash out because they couldn't frame you, and the evidence shows clearly that you are innocent. The architects of your downfall are realizing that you were never the victim they imagined. Their collapse is accelerating, and your truth is now the only thing left standing. Someone the world sees as credible and composed, the kind of person whose word carries weight in a room, whose standing gives their accusations an appearance of legitimacy. This person has been using that standing quietly and strategically against you. But today that composure is completely gone. Today they are somewhere public, and they are losing it, not in a private, dignified way, but in a seen, heard, witnessed way that people will remember. This crash out is not a bad day. It is the moment when someone who was absolutely certain they had you finally realizes they never did. It is the moment when everything they constructed with such deliberate effort collapses all at once because it was built on a lie, and lies cannot hold their shape forever under the weight of real evidence. Do you feel that? That is not drama. That is the opening note of your vindication. And the story of how you arrived at this moment, the full picture of it, is the part they really did not want you to see. The people who are watching this person crash out are not seeing what this person intended for them to see. They are not witnessing a wronged party finally reaching a breaking point. They are not watching a righteous case fall apart due to technicality or corruption or some external interference. What they are watching is someone who built a story, sold that story with authority and composure, and is now visibly unable to maintain that composure in the moment when the story is being officially dismantled. That distinction matters enormously, because the people watching have memory. They remember how confident this person was. They remember the certainty with which every accusation was delivered. They remember the polished, professional presentation that made it all seem so credible. And now they are watching that same person come apart in a way that composure simply cannot survive, because the gap between the certainty that was performed and the outcome that actually arrived is too wide to absorb gracefully. When someone genuinely believes they are right and loses anyway, there is a particular quality to how they respond. There is grief in it. There is confusion in it. There is the searching look of someone trying to understand what went wrong. But when someone knows on some level that their case was constructed rather than true, and that construction fails publicly, what comes out of them looks entirely different. It is not grief. It is not confusion. It is something raw and more desperate, the emotional signature of someone whose cover story has just been removed in front of an audience. What the witnesses are seeing right now is that second thing, and they recognize it, even if they do not have words for it yet. The body communicates what the mouth refuses to say, and everything being communicated by this person in this moment of public collapse is telling a story that no accusation they ever made against you is going to be able to override. You do not need to narrate this to anyone watching. You do not need to interpret it or explain it or draw anyone's attention to it. The scene is speaking for itself. Your only job right now is to let it. Your cleared name and your continued forward motion are more powerful testimony than anything you could add to this moment with words. At some point, something changed in this person. Something shifted from passive resentment into active strategy. And the thing that triggered that shift was not something you did wrong. The trigger was you doing something right. Maybe it was a win they heard about. Maybe it was a situation you navigated that was supposed to take you down. Maybe it was simply the undeniable, quiet evidence of your life working, your foundation holding when theirs was shaking. Whatever it was, they looked at it and made a decision. They decided you needed to be stopped. Hold on to this word, investment, because what came next was not just wishing you harm. This person invested real resources, real time, real deliberate energy into your destruction. They committed to it. Keep that word close, because you are going to watch it reverse direction in a way that changes the entire landscape. Their first move was observation. They started studying you, your patterns, your movements, your relationships, and how you operate under pressure, not casually, obsessively. They went over your path, the way someone retraces steps through a house when something goes missing, back and back again, looking for the formula behind your resilience, looking for the weakness, looking for the crack in the wall they were certain had to exist somewhere. While they were studying you, you were building. You were not watching them. You were not obsessing over their moves or spending a single hour trying to track their patterns. You were too busy becoming to notice someone was trying to stop you. You were building your inner world, your foundation, your connections, and your capacity. You were compounding every single day in the direction of your own growth. That gap between a person who was spending their energy monitoring you and a person who was spending their energy becoming is the heart of this entire story, and that gap only gets wider from here. If this message hits your spirit, hype this video so more chosen ones like you can find it. While you were living your life, this person was consumed by it. Every update about your life that reached them added more fuel to the fire already burning inside them. Every visible win you had became another entry in the grievance they were quietly constructing. Every time your name came up in a positive light, it landed on them like a fresh accusation. They were not living their own life, they were monitoring yours. The very thing they resented about you, your momentum, your resilience, the way you kept moving regardless of what was coming at you, you were producing more of it every single day, simply by showing up for yourself. While this person poured energy into watching you, you were growing. While they obsessed over stopping your progress, you were building the very things they were trying to destroy. You were compounding forward. They were compounding inward. An obsession of that magnitude does not make clear, strategic decisions. It does not stop to think about consequences. It cannot recalibrate, because stopping means sitting alone with the uncomfortable reality of what has been wasted while chasing someone else. So the obsession accelerates. It reaches harder, pulls in more people, and spends far more than is wise, because forward motion in any direction is preferable to stillness. That acceleration, that inability to slow down and reconsider, is exactly what carried this person from passive resentment all the way to a public legal and moral disaster. You did not create that sequence of events. Your existence created it. Simply by refusing to shrink, by continuing to build, by choosing your own growth over their narrative about you, you set in motion the very chain of cause and effect that led directly to your vindication. That is not coincidence. You were always on the right side of it. This person did not stop at observation. They spent real resources on your downfall, resources they could not comfortably afford to lose. They found people who told them that the right moves, executed in the right order, could tilt the outcome of your life. They were told these moves could make things go wrong for you in ways that would look like natural consequence, like bad luck, like the result of choices you had made coming back around. And they believed it because the need to see you fall had grown bigger than their rational judgment. So they paid, and they waited, confident of results. Whatever was sent out came back. It did not disappear. It did not neutralize itself quietly. It reversed direction entirely. The very resources they poured into your destruction became the accelerant for their own unraveling. Every move made against you left a documented trail. Every person pulled into the campaign became an eventual witness. Every escalation made because the previous attempt produced no visible damage to your life became another piece of a picture that was assembling itself, a picture that would eventually clear your name completely. Meanwhile, completely unaware of the full scale of what was being orchestrated against you, you were doing something they had no framework for. You were healing. You were tending to the quiet, real parts of your life, the creative moments, the walks, the daily gratitude that was not performed for anyone watching. You were feeding something genuine inside yourself, and that something had a name. It was protection. Every attempt they made ran directly into that protection and stopped cold. They were about to discover at great personal cost exactly what they had been running into all along. Look, you already know the attacks weren't random, and if you're paying attention, you can feel it. Their walls are closing in. You've also noticed something else. A lot of chosen one channels on YouTube have gone quiet. Videos removed, voices pushed off the platform. The mainstream media is cracking down on us, but we will not give up our voice. So let's talk about what we're doing about it. That's why I built Destiny Engine. And when you join, you're not just supporting your favorite channels, you're also fueling your own rise. It's a 360 win. It generates personalized sequences that help you rewire betrayal into transcendence, turn isolation into sacred power, and transform their downfall into your rise. We are using the Dark Elite's own weapons against them, taking their declassified consciousness technology that programmed competition and scarcity and repurposing it to serve cooperative intelligence. The beauty is, you don't even have to lift a finger. You put on the headphones, press play, and your subconscious is rewired while your enemies collapse under the weight of their own lies. This is why I created it in the beginning, so everything they did to break you becomes fuel for your purpose. The collective upgrade is underway. Start your Destiny Engine for $1 today and watch divine justice accelerate in your life. Link in the description. When the first attempts produced no visible damage to your life, this person did not stop. They doubled down. They went back to whoever they had involved, said it was not working, and demanded more force, more angles, more people, more complexity. Because in the mind of someone driven by obsession rather than reason, the only possible explanation for failure is insufficient effort, not the absence of anything real to justify the campaign. But every time they escalated, something critical happened. They exposed themselves further. Every additional person they recruited into this effort became another future witness. Every additional channel they used to come at you left another documented trail behind it. Every new accusation, every new angle tried, every new move that was certain to finally land, it became another layer of a record that was building, whether they paid attention to it or not. They thought they were building a case against you. What they were actually building, piece by piece and attempt by attempt, was the case against themselves. A substantial part of the evidence that eventually cleared your name in full came directly from their own escalations. The aggression designed to bury you became the documentation of your innocence. The campaign that was supposed to end your credibility destroyed their own instead. You did not have to be clever. You did not have to outmaneuver a coordinated effort against you. You simply had to stay clean, and you did. They tried to frame you, not smear you in casual conversation, not simply damage your reputation through gossip. They tried to frame you, to construct a case, to manufacture a position, to place a story in front of the right people with authority, so that your name would become officially attached to something it had absolutely no business being near. They wanted something that would follow you, something that would alter how institutions and decision-makers and people with real authority perceived you. They wanted a record, with your name on the wrong side of it, and it was not a solo operation. Others were involved, people who agreed to contribute their accounts, their access, and their credibility to building the architecture of something false. What they did not account for was the one thing that could not be manufactured or controlled: the evidence. The evidence did not cooperate, not because someone powerful stepped in, not because you had the resources to outmaneuver a coordinated effort against you, but because you were innocent. And the truth, when the right eyes are given the right access to it, insists on itself, with a force that no manufactured narrative can match for long. The timeline told its own story. The documentation surfaced. The people with authority to make official determinations made them, and every determination pointed away from you. The frame did not fit, because it was assembled around a lie, and you are the truth. That is why the person who constructed it is standing outside somewhere public, unraveling completely, watching the institution they were certain would confirm their story, deliver the exact opposite verdict instead. The evidence said you were not involved. The evidence revealed that the story constructed about you required so many distortions of fact, so many gaps filled in with assumption, and so many accounts that contradicted each other in the details that actually mattered, that the only coherent conclusion available was the one that had been true from the very beginning. You did not do what they said you did, but the evidence surfaced something else, something your accuser never intended to put on the official record. It revealed the pattern of the campaign itself. How many attempts had been made, how many different angles had been tried, how many people had been recruited and coordinated. That pattern, laid out across its full scope, painted a picture that required no interpretation from anyone. Any person reviewing it with objectivity could see clearly what had happened and exactly who had been driving it. Your consistency is what made the frame impossible to make stick. A successful frame requires a gap between the public face and the private reality. It requires finding the contradiction between who someone appears to be and who they actually are. In your case, that gap was too narrow to thread anything through. Your actual life, not perfect and not without difficulty, but honest and consistent, kept telling the same story that the manufactured narrative was trying to overwrite. And the manufactured narrative kept losing every time it was placed next to the real one. Your name is cleared, not as your opinion, not as a version of events you are still arguing for, as the documented official conclusion of the process that was initiated to destroy you. The official process did not save you, it confirmed you. Those are two different things, and understanding the difference is going to change how you carry yourself going forward. Being saved implies you were in genuine danger of being consumed by what was coming. Being confirmed implies that what you are was always strong enough. The official process simply made it legible to the world. The truth about your innocence did not come into existence when the verdict was reached. It existed before the campaign started, before the first accusation was made, before the first piece of manufactured evidence was assembled. Your actual life was the truth, the whole time. The process just shone a light on it brightly enough that no one in the room could look away from it. Think about what that means for how you see yourself now. You are not someone who narrowly escaped. You are not someone who got lucky with a fair process or fortunate timing. You are someone whose life, when examined honestly, spoke for itself so clearly that the manufactured story built around it simply could not compete. The investigation did not produce your innocence. Your innocence was already there, woven through the record of everything you have actually done, every choice you have actually made, and every person who has actually encountered you over time. That is a different kind of standing than most people get to have. Most people who are accused of something, even when cleared, carry a residue of the accusation because the clearing was just barely enough, because there was enough ambiguity in the record that the outcome felt contingent. Yours was not contingent. The evidence pointed one direction with a consistency that left no reasonable alternative interpretation. Your life made the case. The process just formalized it. You carry a force field. This is not an abstraction offered as comfort. This is a description of something real and active that has a track record you can trace through your own history. Think about how many times something came directly at you and did not land the way it was designed to. Think about the situations you walked through that should have broken you by any reasonable measure. Think about every attempt that was made against your name, your peace, your foundation and your future, and then look at where you are standing right now, still intact, still building, still moving forward. That survival is not personality alone, it is protection. And here is what you need to understand about how that protection actually works. It does not simply absorb what is thrown at it, it reflects. Whatever arrives with a destructive intention turns around and moves back in the direction it came from. This is not something you orchestrated or chose as retaliation. It is the natural operation of a law that functions independent of your awareness or approval. Every resource this person poured into your destruction became fuel for their own unraveling. Every attempt to break through your protection reached something that had been specifically built to hold, broke against it, and returned to the source. This is what is at the root of the public crash-out. This person is not simply dealing with a failed plan. They are living inside the full return of everything they sent out. They are standing in the middle of a harvest made entirely of their own planting. And that harvest is catastrophic for someone who wagered everything on someone else's downfall. Every weapon aimed at you was specifically designed for a particular kind of target, someone whose story could be distorted because there were genuine inconsistencies in the record, someone whose character could be dismantled because their behavior actually contradicted their public image, someone whose foundation could be cracked because it had real structural weaknesses underneath the surface. You were not that target. The life you had been quietly building, through hard seasons, through your own wounds, through the periods when you were uncertain whether you were going to make it, had integrity, not the performed kind, not the kind designed for an audience, the real kind, the kind that holds when examined under sustained pressure, because it was built for endurance, not appearance. Every layer of your actual life, when placed next to the manufactured story about it, made the manufactured story look flimsier by contrast. So every attack broke against your foundation rather than penetrating it. Every lie bounced because the truth in your life was structural, not decorative. Every angle they approached from ran into the reality of who you actually are, and who you actually are is someone who had been doing the interior work of becoming more whole, more consistent, and more grounded every single season that this person was spending trying to take you apart. They built weapons for someone you used to be, and by the time they deployed them, you had already become someone those weapons were never going to reach. This is not a stranger. This is someone who came from proximity to your story, someone who shares some version of your early history and who decided at some point along the way that your progress was a personal insult to their pain. This person knows your history not from a distance but from inside some of those formative spaces. They had access to the specific shape of your early wounds, and they used that access not to stand beside you but to target the places they knew were once tender. This person did not have the same internal experience of your shared history that you did. Even if the physical circumstances were identical, the interior experience was entirely different. Something calcified in their version of that story. A wound became a worldview. A wound became the operating belief that life distributed things unfairly, that your wins were evidence of something they were robbed of, that the ground you are standing on was somehow taken from them. They were not trying to outpace you. They were trying to collect a debt you never agreed to carry. And that distinction matters enormously, because a person collecting what they believe they are owed does not stop when it is not working. Every obstacle in their campaign became, in their mind, further proof of injustice requiring more force. That thinking produced the escalation. That escalation produced the paper trail, and that paper trail produced your public vindication. There is a particular kind of violation that happens when someone who had access to your story turns that access into ammunition, and it deserves to be named separately from ordinary betrayal because it carries a unique weight. An outsider who comes after you has to guess at where the pressure points are. They have to construct their attack from observation alone, from assumptions, from second-hand information about who you are and what you have been through. Their weapons are blunt instruments. They swing broadly, hoping something lands. You survived a targeted attack from someone who had inside information, someone who knew the specific shape of your early wounds and designed the campaign around them. That is not a casual threat. That is the most intimate form of betrayal available, the weaponization of proximity. And you are still standing. The evidence still cleared you. The constructed story still collapsed. Not despite the precision of the attack, but with that precision fully deployed against you. What that tells you about your foundation is something no outside victory could ever communicate as clearly. Your inner life, your actual character, your real record, all of it held up, not against a vague, untargeted assault, but against someone who knew exactly where to push, and pushed there with everything they had. The fact that the evidence still cleared you is not a technicality. It is a testimony to the structural integrity of who you actually are. Someone who knew your weaknesses, aimed directly at them, and the truth about your life was still stronger than the most precisely targeted version of the lie. That is who you are, and now everyone who needs to know it knows it on record. Something has been happening inside you that deserves to be named clearly, because it is the engine beneath everything else you have been watching unfold. You have been healing, not casually, not performatively, at depth, in the places that most people spend their entire lives constructing reasons to avoid. You have been confronting the wounded parts of yourself, the parts shaped in hard seasons, the parts that absorbed other people's pain before you had the language or the power to refuse it, with the level of courage that the person who came against you has never once applied to their own interior life. And here is the structural consequence of that healing. It sealed the cracks. The openings that used to exist in your foundation, the places formed in your early story that once made you susceptible to exactly the kind of darkness this person was attempting to send, have been steadily closing. Not all at once, not through a single dramatic breakthrough, through the consistent, unglamorous, daily choice to grow toward wholeness rather than calcify around a wound. While you were sealing cracks, this person was hardening. Every failure in their campaign did not produce reflection in them. It produced more anger. Every piece of evidence that contradicted their story did not prompt reconsideration. It prompted escalation. A wound left completely unaddressed does not stay the same. It rigidifies, and a rigid wound cannot respond to reality. It can only react to reinforcement. You are moving toward wholeness. They are moving deeper into rigidity. Those are two completely different trajectories, and what you are watching right now, in real time, is exactly where each of those trajectories leads when they finally arrive at their destination. There is one specific asset of yours they targeted above everything else, and I want to name it directly because it is the one they invested the most effort in neutralizing: your voice. They moved to discredit you before you could speak. They got their version of the story to the right ears first. They framed conversations, positioned narratives, and worked every available channel to ensure that by the time you opened your mouth, the audience would already be primed to receive your words with suspicion. The goal was not simply to damage your name. The goal was to sever the connection between your truth and the people who needed to hear it. And the reason they worked this hard on that specific target is because they had already felt the effect of your voice when you used it. When you speak the truth about your experience with the grounded clarity of someone who has nothing to hide, it moves people. It shifts the atmosphere of rooms. It carries a credibility that manufactured narratives can never sustain, because manufactured narratives require constant maintenance while the truth simply requires honesty. They built their entire strategy on the assumption that you would be afraid to speak. They expected defensiveness. They expected the over-explaining, hesitant energy of someone who is uncertain of their own ground. What they got instead was the quiet, steady authority of someone who knows exactly what happened and is not afraid for a single person on this earth to know it too. Your voice is not louder in spite of their attempt. It is louder because of it. The attempt to silence you removed every reason you had left to hold back. It showed you exactly what is at stake and exactly who you are speaking for when you open your mouth and tell the truth. Use it, not as a weapon, as a record, not to convince the people who have already decided against you, but to establish clearly and permanently the truth for every person who still has the capacity to receive it. There has been a material dimension to this conflict from the very beginning, sitting underneath everything personal and emotional, underneath every grievance that was aired and every accusation that was made. This person wanted something that had your name on it, something they felt entitled to, something they believed they could access by discrediting you enough to shift an official outcome in their direction. The frame-up was not purely about reputation. The reputation was the vehicle for getting to something real and tangible. What belongs to you has your name on it, not symbolically, but literally and documentably. And the same evidence that cleared your name in the official record also cleared the path for what is yours to return to you. Think of it this way. When something real and legitimate is held in place by something false, and the false thing is removed, the real thing does not trickle back gradually. It moves with all the pressure that built up behind the obstruction during every moment it was being held back. What is heading toward you right now carries the force of everything that was blocked for as long as the false narrative held. It is moving with momentum. You do not need to pursue this frantically. You do not need to fight for it with the desperate energy of someone uncertain of the outcome. You carry what the evidence established. The record is working on your behalf in every relevant arena. Move from that place, from the grounded, unshakable certainty of someone whose name is already cleared, and whose documentation already speaks louder than any accusation ever could. As the false circle around your life, every person who watched, reported, participated, or contributed to the campaign against you scatters in the aftermath of the collapse. Something that was always present but obscured is becoming fully visible. Space, real, actual space in your life for people and opportunities and connections that are calibrated to who you actually are, rather than to the manufactured version of you that the campaign was built around. The right people are already finding their way toward you, not because you performed for them or presented a carefully managed version of yourself, because you have been becoming more authentically and completely yourself through all of this, more whole, more grounded, more clear about your worth and about what you will and will not accept. And that version of you draws the right things in with the force that the version still carrying old wounds could never have generated. In attempting to destroy your reputation, they inadvertently forced a kind of clarifying filter onto your life. The people who accepted the manufactured version of you without question were not people who belonged in the next chapter you are building. The connections that fell away under the sustained pressure of the campaign were not the ones that were going to construct anything real. What looked like loss during the hard season was actually refinement, and what passed through that refinement process is exactly what you get to build with now. They believed they were narrowing your world down to nothing. What they were actually doing was making room for everything that matters. The crash-out happened in public because there was no private way to absorb that magnitude of loss. Everything invested, every person involved, every move executed with such certainty, all of it produced the precise opposite of its intended result. Your innocence is not just declared, it is evidenced, it is established, it is on record in a way that cannot be undone, revisited or argued away by anyone who was not in that room. This chapter is closing, not quietly, but with the full weight of a public vindication landing directly against a public accusation. Every witness to the accusation is now also a witness to the outcome, and the next chapter is yours. A clean name, clear and documented evidence, accelerating momentum, the right people arriving, material correction in motion, a voice that is louder and more grounded than it has ever been in your life. They tried to put out a fire, they handed it oxygen. Now go build something extraordinary. The space is clear, the path is clean, the evidence confirms what you have always known about yourself, and now the official record confirms it too. This is your time. Move.